Get your ghetto ass back to the economy where you belong. Sharon Peterson slammed her hand against Dr. Denise Carter's chest. The veteran flight attendant's voice boomed through first class, dripping with unchecked authority. These people bought fake tickets, Sharon announced, ripping Dr. Denise Carter's boarding pass from her hand and waving it overhead like a trophy. Probably used stolen credit cards like they always do. Kevin Whitaker watched his colleague stumble, her worn messenger bag spilling its contents across the cabin floor. Phones emerged instantly, cameras rolled, passengers leaned forward, hungry for drama. Sharon planted herself in the aisle, arms crossed, blocking their path like a human barricade. Her smile was pure satisfaction. Another successful catch. "Security's coming for you thieves," she whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. Have you ever been called a criminal while strangers recorded your humiliation for entertainment? The cabin fell silent, except for the soft hum of air conditioning and the rapid-fire clicks of camera shutters. Dr. Denise Carter knelt slowly, gathering her scattered belongings from the first-class aisle while the passengers watched through their phone screens. "Ma'am, I purchased these seats through my company's travel system," Dr. Denise Carter said quietly, rising to face Sharon. Her voice remained steady despite the flush creeping up her neck. Sharon's laugh was sharp and theatrical. "Your company? What company sends people like you in expensive seats?" She examined Dr. Denise Carter's faded jeans and oversized hoodie with obvious disgust. "Let me guess, you hack someone's frequent flyer account, or maybe use your welfare card to buy fake tickets online." Kevin stepped beside his colleague, his jaw tight. "Miss Peterson, we have legitimate boarding passes for seats 1A and 1B. There's no issue here." "Oh, there's an issue, all right." Sharon turned to address the entire cabin, her voice carrying to the back rows. "Folks, we're dealing with suspected credit card fraud. These individuals somehow obtained first-class boarding passes worth a fortune. I've seen this before. Stolen identities, fake documents, the whole 9 yards." A passenger in 2C lifted her phone higher. Jessica Morgan, lifestyle blogger with a large Instagram following, had started her live stream the moment Sharon raised her voice. The viewer count climbed rapidly and kept rising. "Y'all see this discrimination happening right now?" Jessica whispered into her phone. "The flight attendant just called these passengers Ghetto and is claiming they stole their seats. This is insane." Comments flooded the screen faster than Jessica could read them. "Record everything. Sue the airline. This isn't the era of segregation anymore. Someone get their names." Gate agent Mike Anderson jogged down the jet bridge, radio crackling against his shoulder. "Sharon, what's the situation? We're showing delays on the departure board." "Mike, thank God you're here." Sharon gestured dramatically toward Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker. "These two are trying to steal first-class seats. I need you to verify their tickets. They're obviously fraudulent." Mike examined the boarding passes with practiced efficiency. The tickets were legitimate. American Airlines stock, proper barcodes, correct flight information. But Sharon's certainty made him second-guess the evidence in his hands. "The system shows these seats were purchased with a corporate credit card," Mike said slowly, glancing between the documents and the two passengers. "But what?" Sharon interrupted. "Look at them, Mike. Do they look like they can afford expensive airplane seats? Use your common sense." Dr. Denise Carter's messenger bag sat slightly open beside her feet. The corner of an official government identification card peeked out along with what appeared to be a federal agency logo. Kevin Whitaker's phone buzzed against his hip. The display showed an FAA priority alert before he quickly silenced it. "Let her finish her investigation," Dr. Denise Carter murmured to Kevin so quietly only he could hear. "Standard protocol." Kevin nodded almost imperceptibly, pulling out his own phone to document details and witness counts. His fingers moved methodically across the screen, logging everything with practiced precision. Boarding announcement crackled overhead. Flight 447 passengers were showing a short delay for departure. "Thank you for your patience." The delay announcement sent murmurs through the cabin. Business travelers checked their watches. Connecting passengers calculated missed flights. The pressure mounted. "That's how long it takes to remove fraudulent passengers and get honest people to their destinations," Sharon announced loudly. A man in 1D muttered under his breath. "This is ridiculous. Just get them off the plane." A woman across the aisle whispered to her husband, "I knew something was wrong when they walked past us. They didn't belong here." Jessica's live stream kept drawing more viewers. The comments section exploded with real-time reactions. Someone identify this flight attendant. American Airlines is about to get sued. Where's the manager? This is going viral. Captain Steve Wilson's voice came through Sharon's earpiece. Flight attendant Peterson, what's your status? We need clearance for pushback. Captain, we have a theft situation in first class. 2 passengers with questionable tickets. I'm handling it properly. Sharon turned back to Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker, emboldened by what she perceived as support from the crew and passengers. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your fake tickets, walk back to the economy where you belong, and we're all going to pretend this never happened, or I can call airport security and have you arrested for fraud. Ma'am, Dr. Denise Carter said carefully, what specific evidence do you have that our tickets are fraudulent? Sharon's eyes narrowed. Evidence? The evidence is standing right in front of me. People like you don't fly first class unless you're stealing it from people like us. The words hung in the cabin air like smoke. Jessica's live stream captured every syllable. The passengers held their breath, and somewhere in the back of Dr. Denise Carter's bag, a federal badge waited for its moment. Mike Anderson grabbed his radio, his voice cutting through the mounting tension. Operations, I need security at gate A7. We have a situation requiring assistance. Within minutes, 2 airport security officers boarded the aircraft. Officer Ryan Thompson, a veteran with the Transportation Security Administration, surveyed the scene with practiced eyes. His partner, Officer Megan Santos, positioned herself near the aircraft door. What's the issue here? Ryan asked, though his tone suggested he'd already formed an opinion based on Sharon's briefing over the radio. Sharon stepped forward, her confidence growing with each additional authority figure. Officers, we have suspected seat theft. These individuals, she gestured toward Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker, somehow obtained first-class boarding passes worth a fortune. I believe they're using stolen credit cards or fraudulent frequent flyer accounts. Ryan nodded slowly, studying Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker's casual attire. Ma'am, sir, I'm going to need to see some identification along with your boarding passes. Dr. Denise Carter reached for her wallet with deliberate calm. Of course, officer. She handed over her driver's license while Kevin did the same. Dr. Denise Carter, Ryan read aloud. Mr. Kevin Whitaker. He compared the names to the boarding passes. Everything matches up here. Sharon's frustration bubbled over. Ryan, look at them. Do they look like doctors to you? She's probably using a fake ID, too. This is identity theft on top of credit card fraud. The accusation sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the cabin. Jessica's live stream had reached high numbers with notifications pinging constantly as the video was shared across social platforms. The flight attendant says they're using fake IDs now, Jessica whispered to her audience. This keeps getting worse. Comments streamed past. American Airlines stock about to tank. Someone call the news stations. This is criminal harassment. Get their badge numbers. A woman in 4B held her phone higher, capturing the scene from a different angle. This is crazy, she muttered to her husband. I'm posting this everywhere. The businessman in 1D checked his watch impatiently. This is affecting my connection to London. Just remove them already. Sharon seized on the passenger support. See, honest passengers are being inconvenienced because these thieves won't admit what they've done. Captain Steve Wilson's voice crackled through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to a security matter. We appreciate your patience and expect to be airborne shortly. The announcement only amplified the tension. Passengers craned their necks to get better views. Some stood in the aisles, phones recording from multiple angles. The incident was being documented from every conceivable perspective. A businessman in 3A called out, "How long is this going to take? Some of us have connections to make." Sharon seized the moment. "Sir, I'm sorry for the delay. These passengers are holding up everyone because they refuse to accept that they don't belong in first class." Ryan studied the identification cards again, then radioed his dispatcher. "Central, can you run a verification on Denise Carter?" He rattled off the details while Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker waited silently. Kevin's phone buzzed again, another FAA priority alert message. He glanced at the screen briefly before sliding it back into his pocket, but not before Dr. Denise Carter caught sight of the federal seal in the notification banner. "Not yet," she whispered, barely audible. The radio crackled back. "Ryan, IDs check out clean. No warrants, no flags. Both are legitimate. Sharon's face flushed red. That doesn't prove anything. They could have bought those IDs or stolen someone's identity. Just because the fake IDs are good doesn't mean the seats are legitimate. Officer Megan Santos stepped closer. Ma'am, what specific evidence do you have of fraud? The boarding pass is scanned correctly. The IDs are valid. The names match. The evidence is obvious. Sharon's voice rose to near shouting. Look at their clothes. Look at how they carry themselves. I've been doing this job for years, and I know when something isn't right. A passenger in 2D muttered, She's got a point. They don't exactly look like first-class material. Another voice from the back. Just move them to economy and let's go. The comments stung, but Dr. Denise Carter maintained her composure. Years of professional training had prepared her for moments like this. Beside her, Kevin Whitaker's jaw tightened as he continued documenting the incident on his phone. Mike wiped sweat from his forehead. Sharon, maybe we should just… No. Sharon cut him off. I'm not backing down. These people are criminals, and I'm going to prove it. Jessica's live stream kept drawing more viewers. Local news stations had begun monitoring the feed. Hashtags like flight discrimination were trending on social media with many mentions. Ryan's radio squawked again. All units, be advised we have media attention on the A7 situation. Handle with discretion. The officer's demeanor shifted slightly. Media attention meant paperwork, investigations, and potential lawsuits. He needed to resolve this quickly and professionally. A new passenger spoke up from row 5. I fly this route weekly. I've never seen anything like this. They paid for their seats. Let them sit. But another voice countered, You don't know what kind of scam they're running. The flight attendant knows her job. The cabin was becoming divided, some passengers supporting Sharon and others growing uncomfortable with the prolonged confrontation. The tension was palpable, crackling through the recycled air. Ma'am, sir, Ryan addressed Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker. I'm going to need you to step off the aircraft while we sort this out. It's just temporary while we verify your tickets. Sharon smiled triumphantly. Finally, I told you they were fraudulent. But Dr. Denise Carter remained seated, her hands folded calmly in her lap. Officer Thompson, before we comply, may I ask what specific evidence has led you to believe we've committed a crime? The question hung in the cabin air. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Well, the flight attendant believes… What does the flight attendant believe specifically? Dr. Denise Carter's voice remained steady and professional. That we don't look wealthy enough for first class? That our clothing suggests criminal behavior? That our race indicates a propensity for fraud? Sharon stepped forward aggressively. Don't you dare make this about race. This is about theft, pure and simple. Is it? Kevin Whitaker finally spoke, his voice carrying an odd authority that made several passengers lean forward. Officer Thompson, in your professional opinion, what probable cause exists for detaining paying passengers? Ryan hesitated. In his years of airport security, he'd never been questioned so methodically by alleged perpetrators. Something felt off, but Sharon's certainty and the passenger complaints created pressure to act. Look, Ryan said, we can do this easy or hard. You can step off voluntarily for verification, or I can detain you for suspected fraud. Your choice. Dr. Denise Carter's messenger bag sat at her feet, still partially open. The federal identification card remained visible along with what appeared to be an official government seal. Her hand rested inches from the bag, fingers poised. Officer Thompson, she said quietly, before you detain federal employees for fraud, you might want to know exactly who you're arresting. The words federal employees sent a chill through the cabin. Sharon's confident smile faltered. Ryan's hand moved instinctively toward his radio, but Dr. Denise Carter wasn't finished. Because in a moment, this situation is going to change dramatically, and everyone with a camera is going to witness exactly how American Airlines treats its federal oversight inspectors. The cabin fell into absolute silence. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Dr. Denise Carter reached into her messenger bag with deliberate precision, her movements calm and methodical. Every passenger leaned forward. Jessica's live stream exploded as notifications cascaded across social media platforms. She withdrew 2 items and placed them carefully on the armrest of seat 1. A Federal Aviation Administration inspector credential, its gold shield gleaming under the cabin lights. and a Department of Transportation civil rights investigation badge complete with federal seal and photo identification. Ryan's face went ashen. Officer Megan Santos stepped closer, studying the credentials with growing alarm. Mike Anderson's radio slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers. "I'm Dr. Denise Carter, Senior Inspector with the Federal Aviation Administration's Civil Rights Enforcement Division," Dr. Denise Carter announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the cabin. "This is Senior Inspector Kevin Whitaker, FAA Safety Oversight Division." Kevin reached into his jacket, producing his own federal credentials along with an official travel authorization bearing the Department of Transportation letterhead. "We're conducting a discrimination assessment of American Airlines operations," Kevin continued, his professional demeanor replacing the quiet compliance he'd maintained. This flight was specifically selected for federal evaluation. Sharon's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The confident authority she'd wielded moments before evaporated, leaving behind a woman suddenly aware she'd made a catastrophic mistake. Ryan examined the credentials with shaking hands. The IDs were unmistakably authentic. Holographic seals, federal watermarks, official photographs. His years of security experience had never prepared him for this scenario. "Ma'am, Inspector Carter, I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Dr. Denise Carter replied calmly. "That was precisely the point." Jessica's live stream comments exploded. "Holy, they're federal inspectors. Plot twist of the century. Sharon is so fired. American Airlines is..." The viewer count kept climbing. Hashtags like federal inspectors began trending alongside flight discrimination. Captain Steve Wilson appeared from the cockpit, drawn by the sudden silence and the crowd of security personnel in his first-class cabin. "What's the situation here?" Ryan held up the federal credentials with trembling hands. "Captain, these passengers are federal aviation inspectors conducting an official investigation." The color drained from Steve Wilson's face as the implications struck him. Federal inspectors, civil rights investigation, witnesses live streamed to a huge audience. "Inspectors," he began carefully, "I sincerely apologize for any—" "Captain Wilson," Dr. Denise Carter interrupted, consulting her tablet which had appeared from her bag. "We need to document this incident properly. Your flight attendant, Sharon Peterson, publicly accused federal inspectors of theft, fraud, and identity theft. She used the phrases ghetto asses, people like you, and thieves while physically preventing us from accessing seats we'd legally purchased with federal travel funds." Sharon finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "I didn't know. You never said. I was just doing my job." "Your job," Kevin said, pulling out his own tablet and stylus, "includes profiling passengers based on their race and clothing, publicly accusing paying customers of felony crimes, using racial slurs during passenger interactions." "I never said anything racial," Sharon protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Dr. Denise Carter tapped her tablet screen. "We have documented multiple discriminatory statements during the confrontation, plus testimony from the passengers and live stream evidence viewed by many people." Mike Anderson found his voice. "Inspectors, this is clearly a misunderstanding. Sharon was just being thorough." "Thorough?" Kevin's eyebrows rose. "She called us ghetto and accused us of welfare fraud. Which part of your training manual covers that approach?" The passengers who had supported Sharon's actions suddenly found their phones very interesting. The businessman in 1D who had complained about delays was now trying to delete his recorded comments. The woman in 2D who had agreed they didn't look like first-class material slumped in her seat. But Dr. Denise Carter wasn't finished. "Ms. Peterson, you've been employed by American Airlines for years. In that time, how many black passengers have you subjected to additional scrutiny in first class?" Sharon's silence spoke volumes. "Inspector Carter," Captain Steve Wilson interjected desperately, "surely we can resolve this matter internally." "Captain, this isn't an internal matter anymore." Dr. Denise Carter gestured toward the phones recording throughout the cabin. "This is a federal civil rights investigation being documented in real time by a large audience. Your airline's response will determine whether this remains a training opportunity or becomes a federal enforcement action." Ryan's radio crackled. "Thompson, we're getting calls from news stations. What's your status?" The security officer looked helplessly between his radio and the federal inspectors. "Central, be advised we have federal aviation inspectors aboard Flight 447. The situation is complicated. Officer Megan Santos spoke for the first time since boarding. Inspectors, we received reports of suspected fraud. We had no knowledge of your federal status. Of course not, Dr. Denise Carter replied. We don't typically announce our presence during routine assessments. The point is to observe normal operational procedures. Kevin consulted his tablet. Officer Thompson, you performed appropriately given the information provided. However, Ms. Peterson's initial accusations were based solely on our appearance and race. That's the issue under federal investigation. Jessica's live stream had become a sensation. News outlets were scrambling to contact American Airlines for comment. Hashtags like FAA inspectors were trending worldwide. The stock market was already responding. American Airlines shares had dropped in pre-market trading. Sharon made one last desperate attempt. Inspectors, I swear I wasn't being racist. I treat all passengers equally. Ask anyone who works with me. Dr. Denise Carter's tablet chimed with an incoming priority message. She glanced at the screen and smiled slightly, the first genuine emotion she'd shown since boarding. Ms. Peterson, that's interesting because according to the federal database I'm accessing right now, you've been involved in multiple passenger complaints in recent years. Most of those complaints involve passengers of color. Would you like to explain that pattern? The revelation hit the cabin like a thunderclap. Sharon's face went from pale to gray. Mike looked like he might vomit. Captain Steve Wilson was already calculating the federal fines and media disaster heading his way, but Dr. Denise Carter had one more card to play. There's something else you should know, she said, her voice carrying an edge of steel for the first time. This assessment wasn't random. We've been tracking American Airlines discrimination patterns for some time. Ms. Peterson, you've been under federal observation for considerably longer than just today's flight. The words hung in the recycled air like a death sentence. Sharon's legs gave out and she slumped against the galley wall. The confident flight attendant who had publicly humiliated 2 federal inspectors was gone, replaced by a woman facing the destruction of her career and potential federal charges. Jessica's live stream kept soaring. The story was exploding across every social platform. And in seat 1A, Dr. Denise Carter calmly made notes on her federal tablet while the woman who had called her Ghetto earlier contemplated the ruins of her life. Captain Steve Wilson's hands shook as he reached for the aircraft phone. Operations, this is Flight 447. I need an immediate conference with regional management and legal. We have a federal situation requiring executive intervention. Before long, the phone rang back. Regional Manager Elizabeth Carter's voice crackled through the speaker, tense and clipped. Captain Wilson, I'm here with Legal Director David Harrison and Customer Relations Director Amanda Kim. What exactly are we dealing with? Dr. Denise Carter leaned forward, her federal credentials still visible on the armrest. Ms. Carter, this is Dr. Denise Carter, FAA Senior Inspector. I'm going to put this conversation on speaker so my colleague can document your responses for our federal report. A pause, then Elizabeth's voice, noticeably more careful. Inspector Carter, we weren't aware of any scheduled federal assessment. Routine assessments are unannounced by design, Kevin interjected, activating his tablet's recording function. Ms. Carter, are you familiar with Title 14, Code of Federal Regulations, Section 382.7, regarding discriminatory practices by air carriers? Yes, we're familiar with federal regulations. Dr. Denise Carter consulted her tablet. Excellent. Then you'll understand that violations carry significant penalties per incident. Our documentation shows multiple separate discriminatory acts during the confrontation. The math was brutal in potential federal fines for a single flight. Legal Director David Harrison's voice joined the call. Inspector Carter, surely we can discuss this matter reasonably. Mr. Harrison, let's discuss reasonably, Dr. Denise Carter replied, her tone remaining professionally neutral. American Airlines generated billions in revenue last fiscal year. Your DOT compliance certification directly impacts your federal route authorization worth a substantial amount annually. The silence on the phone line stretched uncomfortably long. Additionally, Kevin continued consulting his own screen. Our Civil Rights Task Force investigated similar incidents across multiple airlines. The average federal settlement was substantial per case. The average operational impact from federal oversight reviews was considerable per carrier. Jessica's live stream had exploded with viewers. News outlets were going live with breaking coverage. Hashtags like American Airlines discrimination were trending globally with many posts. The stock market had taken notice. AA shares were down and falling. Ryan's radio erupted with chatter. All units, media vans arriving at terminal. CNN truck on scene requesting crowd control protocols. Customer Relations Director Amanda Kim tried damage control. Inspectors, we absolutely don't tolerate discrimination. This appears to be an isolated incident by one employee. Ms. Kim, Dr. Denise Carter interrupted. Our federal database shows Ms. Peterson has been involved in multiple discrimination complaints in recent years, most involved passengers of color. Your company's response to previous complaints shows a pattern of minimal corrective action. Sharon, still slumped against the galley, looked like she might faint. Mike Anderson was frantically taking notes, probably calculating his own career survival odds. The confidence he had shown supporting Sharon had evaporated completely. Furthermore, Kevin added, displaying his screen data, we've identified systemic issues in your bias training protocols. Current programs consist of a short online module completed annually. Federal standards require intensive bias elimination training with regular reinforcement. Inspectors, Amanda interjected nervously. Surely the length of training isn't the primary issue here. Ms. Kim, inadequate training directly contributed to this incident, Dr. Denise Carter replied. Ms. Peterson used racial slurs and made assumptions based solely on passenger appearance. This indicates fundamental gaps in cultural competency education. Elizabeth Carter's voice returned now with a desperate edge. What would constitute appropriate federal remediation? Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin exchanged glances. This was the moment their months of investigation and planning had led to. Ms. Carter, we require immediate systematic changes, not cosmetic adjustments, Dr. Denise Carter stated. First, comprehensive retraining of all customer-facing employees using federally approved curricula. Second, implementation of AI-powered bias monitoring systems with real-time alerts. Third, establishment of an independent federal oversight board for discrimination complaints. The technology integration alone would cost a fortune across the fleet, David began, but Kevin finished. We've already calculated implementation costs. American Airlines can invest in federal compliance voluntarily or face mandatory federal oversight at an estimated high cost over the coming years. The phone line crackled with hushed conversations in the background. Executives were clearly scrambling to assess options and calculate financial impacts. Captain Steve Wilson received a priority message on his company tablet. His eyes widened as he read, Inspectors, I'm being informed that CNN, Washington Post, and ABC News are requesting immediate statements about this incident. Additionally, Kevin noted, consulting multiple screens, social media analysis shows this incident has generated a huge number of mentions recently. Customer sentiment tracking indicates significant brand damage across key demographics. Jessica's live stream comments were exploding faster than she could read. AA stock tanking. CEO better resign. This is history being made. Federal justice in real time. Never flying AA again. The viewer count kept climbing. Hashtags like federal justice were trending alongside the airline hashtags. Dr. Denise Carter's tablet chimed with an incoming priority call. She glanced at the screen and smiled. Ms. Carter, I'm receiving a call from Transportation Secretary Martinez's office. Apparently, this incident has reached cabinet-level attention. Cabinet level? Elizabeth's voice nearly cracked. Yes. When federal inspectors are publicly humiliated and accused of crimes, it tends to get Washington's attention quickly. Dr. Denise Carter declined the call, letting it go to voicemail. I'll return that call after we resolve this situation. The implications were staggering. Cabinet-level attention meant congressional hearings, federal investigations, and potential industry-wide regulatory changes. Kevin pulled up another screen. Ms. Carter, our real-time analysis shows American Airlines stock has dropped significantly. Market analysts are projecting potential losses if this situation escalates to full federal investigation. Our modeling shows similar incidents have resulted in boycotts lasting some time, Dr. Denise Carter added, consulting her economic impact data. Delta gained revenue following United's passenger removal incident in earlier years. The corporate team was clearly in crisis mode. Voices buzzed in the background. Calculators clicked and emergency protocols activated. Ryan received another radio update. Thompson, FAA Administrator, requesting immediate incident report. This is now a federal priority investigation. Inspectors, Elizabeth Carter finally said, we'd like to arrange immediate executive consultation. Can we conference CEO Robert Klein into this discussion? Dr. Denise Carter checked her tablet. We can accommodate an executive conference, but understand our federal report filing has mandatory deadlines regardless of corporate discussions. The confirmation came. Please hold for CEO Klein. While they waited, Dr. Denise Carter addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. This federal assessment is providing valuable data about discrimination in commercial aviation. Some passengers nodded supportively. Others looked uncomfortable, realizing they had witnessed and potentially participated in federal civil rights violations. The businessman in 1D was discreetly deleting his recorded comments. Mike Anderson approached tentatively. Inspectors, what about my role in this situation? Mr. Anderson, Kevin replied, your actions will be noted in our report. Supporting discriminatory accusations without independent verification raises serious questions about training adequacy. The phone crackled back to life. Inspectors, this is Robert Klein, CEO of American Airlines. His voice carried the weight of running a major corporation that was currently hemorrhaging value in real time. Mr. Klein, Dr. Denise Carter replied, we appreciate your direct involvement. However, we need concrete systematic commitments, not executive apologies. Inspector Carter, what specific federal requirements would constitute full compliance? Kevin consulted his tablet. Implementation of the Carter-Whitaker Protocol for bias elimination, federal monitoring systems across all daily flights, independent federal review board with enforcement authority, and substantial investment in bias elimination technology within the required time frame. The CEO's voice tightened. Mr. Klein, every day of delay represents continued federal non-compliance. Our authority includes immediate operational reviews that could ground aircraft pending full compliance verification. The threat was clear. American Airlines could voluntarily implement changes or face federal enforcement that would devastate their operations. Additionally, Dr. Denise Carter added, consulting her notes, we require public quarterly federal compliance reports accessible via your website and federal databases, full transparency in discrimination metrics and remediation efforts. Jessica's live stream had become a global phenomenon. International news outlets were picking up the story. Hashtags like federal transparency joined the trending topics. Mr. Klein, Kevin said, we are prepared to recommend this incident as a model for voluntary federal compliance, or it becomes a cautionary tale about mandatory federal enforcement. Your choice. The CEO's decision would determine whether American Airlines controlled this narrative or became a victim of it. Inspectors, American Airlines commits to full federal compliance implementation within your specified timeline. Excellent. We'll need that commitment in writing, copied to Transportation Secretary Martinez's office within the required period. As the corporate conference ended, Sharon finally spoke, her voice barely audible. What happens to me? Dr. Denise Carter looked at the woman who had called her Ghetto and accused her of theft earlier. Ms. Peterson, that's between you, your employer, and the federal investigation findings. But everyone in the cabin knew Sharon's career was over. The question was whether she would face federal charges for civil rights violations. Later, the aviation industry woke up to a new reality. American Airlines' emergency board meeting had concluded with unanimous approval of the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in commercial aviation history. The announcement hit newswires before markets opened, accompanied by a formal apology from CEO Robert Klein and a detailed timeline for implementation. Sharon Peterson received her termination notice via certified mail. Years of employment ended with a single-page letter citing conduct incompatible with company values and federal compliance requirements. Her union representative had already advised her that defending racial discrimination accusations would be career suicide. Mike Anderson fared better. Mandatory retraining and reassignment to ground operations with a notation in his permanent file. He had publicly apologized on LinkedIn, acknowledging his failure to prevent discrimination when he had the authority to intervene. But the real changes ran deeper than personnel actions. Soon after, American Airlines announced the implementation of what became known industry-wide as the Carter-Whitaker Protocol, a comprehensive bias elimination system that would revolutionize airline operations. The technology centerpiece was an AI-powered monitoring system that analyzed passenger interactions in real time. Every gate, every check-in counter, every cabin crew station was equipped with audio analysis software that detected discriminatory language patterns and escalated incidents immediately to management. The system recognizes a vast number of bias indicators across multiple languages, explained Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, American's newly hired Chief Diversity Officer, in her first press conference. When potential discrimination is detected, supervisors receive immediate alerts on their mobile devices. The monitoring system cost a significant amount to implement across American's fleet, but early results were dramatic. Initially, the system flagged potential incidents, leading to immediate intervention in many cases before they escalated to passenger complaints. Every customer-facing employee, from ticket agents to flight attendants to gate personnel, was required to complete intensive federally approved bias elimination training. The program, developed in partnership with the NAACP and the Anti-Defamation League, replaced the previous short online module with intensive scenario-based education. Flight attendants practiced de-escalation techniques with actors portraying passengers from diverse backgrounds. Gate agents learned to recognize unconscious bias in their decision-making processes. Customer service representatives underwent cultural competency training that addressed historical discrimination patterns in transportation. "We're not just changing policies," said Training Director Michael Reynolds during a staff briefing. "We're changing the fundamental way we see and serve our passengers." The training requirement initially caused staffing challenges as employees cycled through the program, but passenger satisfaction scores began climbing before long. American Airlines established the nation's first independent passenger rights review board, composed of civil rights attorneys, community leaders, and former federal investigators. The board had authority to investigate discrimination complaints, impose corrective actions, and recommend personnel changes. Dr. Denise Carter was invited to serve as the board's technical advisor, providing federal expertise on discrimination detection and prevention. She accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to create lasting systemic change beyond punitive enforcement. "Real reform requires collaboration," Dr. Denise Carter explained to a congressional subcommittee investigating discrimination in transportation. "We can write regulations and impose fines, but sustainable change happens when companies become partners in civil rights protection." The Carter-Whitaker Protocol didn't remain exclusive to American Airlines for long. Delta announced its adoption of similar monitoring systems before long, unwilling to risk competitive disadvantage or federal scrutiny. United followed with an even more comprehensive program, adding passenger feedback integration and predictive bias modeling. Southwest Airlines partnered directly with the NAACP to develop their training curriculum. JetBlue implemented quarterly bias audits conducted by external civil rights organizations. Before long, every major U.S. airline had implemented some version of bias monitoring and enhanced training. The Federal Aviation Administration incorporated the Carter-Whitaker Protocol into its recommended practices, effectively making it an industry standard. The transformation wasn't cheap. Industry-wide investment in bias elimination technology and training was substantial in the initial period, but the financial returns were measurable and significant. Customer satisfaction scores increased across participating airlines. Discrimination complaints dropped substantially industry-wide. More importantly, airlines began attracting new customers who had previously avoided air travel due to discrimination concerns. "We've seen an increase in bookings from minority travelers," reported American's chief financial officer during a quarterly earnings call. "The bias elimination program has actually expanded our customer base while improving service quality." Stock prices, initially depressed by implementation costs, recovered and exceeded pre-incident levels before long. Market analysts attributed the gains to improved brand reputation and expanded customer demographics. The demand for bias detection technology sparked innovation across the tech industry. Startups specialized in discrimination monitoring raised significant funding and venture capital. Established companies like IBM and Microsoft developed advanced AI solutions for unconscious bias detection. The technology evolved beyond simple keyword recognition to analyze voice patterns, conversation context, and behavioral indicators. Systems could distinguish between legitimate security concerns and discriminatory profiling with high accuracy. "We're essentially teaching computers to recognize unfairness," explained Dr. Amanda Chen, lead developer of American's monitoring system. "The technology can detect bias patterns that humans might miss or dismiss." The incident prompted broader federal action beyond airline-specific reforms. The Department of Transportation proposed new regulations requiring bias monitoring across all transportation sectors: buses, trains, ride-sharing services, and commercial aviation. Congress introduced the Transportation Equity Act, mandating federal oversight of discrimination prevention programs and establishing national standards for bias elimination training. The legislation passed with bipartisan support, creating the first comprehensive federal framework for preventing transportation discrimination. "This incident demonstrated that voluntary compliance isn't sufficient," testified Transportation Secretary Martinez before the Senate Commerce Committee. "We need systematic, enforceable standards that protect all travelers' civil rights." The training programs continued evolving based on real-world results and feedback. Virtual reality scenarios allowed employees to experience discrimination from the passenger perspective. Interactive simulations tested decision-making under pressure. Ongoing assessment measured bias reduction over time. Most importantly, the training addressed systemic issues rather than individual prejudices. Employees learned how historical discrimination patterns influenced current practices and how seemingly neutral policies could produce discriminatory outcomes. "We're not trying to eliminate human judgment," explained Dr. Elizabeth Morgan. "We're training people to make better judgments by recognizing their unconscious biases and institutional barriers." The Carter-Whittaker Protocol gained international attention as airlines worldwide examined their own discrimination prevention measures. European carriers began implementing similar monitoring systems. Asian airlines partnered with American companies to access bias detection technology. The International Air Transport Association adopted modified versions of the protocol as recommended practices for its member airlines. What began as a response to one incident on Flight 447 became a global movement toward transportation equity. Perhaps the most significant change was the empowerment of passengers to report and address discrimination in real time. American's mobile app included a discrimination reporting feature that triggered immediate management response. Passengers could upload audio, video, and photographic evidence directly to the independent review board. The app logged many downloads in its first week and became a model for other transportation companies. Passenger advocacy groups praised the transparency and immediate response capabilities. "For the first time, passengers have real power to address discrimination as it happens," said Anthony Johnson, director of the Transportation Equity Coalition. "They're not waiting weeks for complaint investigations. They're getting immediate intervention." Sometime after the incident on Flight 447, the transformation was complete but ongoing. Discrimination incidents had become rare, but vigilance remained high. The monitoring systems continued detecting subtle bias patterns and recommending targeted interventions. Most importantly, the culture had shifted. Employees actively looked for opportunities to provide excellent service to all passengers. Discrimination became not just prohibited, but professionally unthinkable. Sharon Peterson, meanwhile, had been unable to find employment in the travel industry. Her termination for civil rights violations made her unemployable by major carriers. She eventually found work in retail, earning less than her airline salary, serving as a cautionary tale about the career consequences of discrimination. Jessica Morgan's live stream had become a case study in citizen journalism and social media activism. She had gained a large following and parlayed her documentation of the incident into a career as a civil rights advocate and digital content creator. But the greatest victory belonged to Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whittaker, whose professional response to personal humiliation had created systematic change affecting millions of travelers. Their names were permanently associated with the most significant advancement in transportation civil rights since the Interstate Commerce Act. "We turned our worst professional moment into our greatest professional achievement," Dr. Denise Carter reflected during a keynote speech at the National Civil Rights Conference. "Sometimes the most powerful response to injustice is simply doing your job with excellence and integrity." Later, Dr. Denise Carter stood before a packed auditorium at Howard University delivering the keynote address for Civil Rights History Month. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the now famous photo. Sharon Peterson blocking the aisle while Dr. Denise Carter calmly held her federal credentials. "Power," Dr. Denise Carter began, her voice carrying to the back rows filled with students, activists, and transportation industry leaders. "Isn't about raising your voice or demanding respect. Real power is knowing your worth and letting your competence speak louder than anyone's ignorance ever could." The audience erupted in applause, but Dr. Denise Carter raised her hand for quiet and continued. "Sharon Peterson saw our clothes and assumed criminality. She heard our voices and decided we were threats. She looked at our faces and concluded we didn't belong, but she missed the most important thing about us. We were exactly where we were supposed to be, doing exactly what we were trained to do." In the audience, Kevin Whitaker smiled from the front row, now serving as director of the newly created National Transportation Equity Division. Their partnership had evolved from chance colleagues to architects of systemic change affecting every major transportation system in America. The Carter-Whitaker Protocol had spread far beyond aviation. Amtrak implemented bias monitoring across their rail network. Greyhound adopted similar training for bus drivers and station personnel. Even ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft integrated discrimination detection into their driver evaluation systems. The numbers told the story of transformation. Transportation discrimination complaints down substantially nationally, minority passenger satisfaction up across all modes, employee bias recognition improved through enhanced training. Industry investment in equity programs substantial and growing. "We didn't just change American Airlines," Kevin had testified before Congress sometime earlier. "We changed how America moves." Sharon Peterson had eventually found work as a customer service trainer for a small regional company, ironically teaching the bias awareness skills she had lacked on Flight 447. Her termination had become a teaching case in business schools, illustrating the career consequences of discrimination in the social media age. Mike Anderson completed his retraining program and was promoted to Regional Customer Experience Manager, becoming one of Americans' most effective bias prevention advocates. His personal transformation from passive enabler to active ally demonstrated that people could grow from their mistakes. Jessica Morgan had leveraged her viral live stream into a career as a civil rights documentary filmmaker. Her latest project, Seat 1A, How Federal Inspectors Changed Aviation, was premiering at the Sundance Film Festival before long. Captain Steve Wilson remained with American Airlines, now serving as their chief pilot for diversity and inclusion, training crews on respectful passenger interaction and emergency bias intervention protocols. The incident became required study material in federal aviation training programs, business school ethics courses, civil rights law curricula, social media and citizen journalism programs, corporate crisis management workshops. Dr. Denise Carter's federal badge, the one she had calmly displayed on Flight 447, was donated to the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture, representing the evolution of civil rights enforcement in the digital age. "We could have shouted," Dr. Denise Carter continued her Howard speech. "We could have demanded immediate recognition. We could have played the victim. Instead, we documented everything, followed federal protocol, and let our professionalism do the talking." She gestured to a slide showing discrimination complaint trends. Loud responses get attention for a day. Professional responses create change that lasts decades. The philosophy of quiet power, responding to discrimination with documentation, federal authority, and systematic solutions rather than emotional confrontation, was now taught in federal training programs nationwide. The monitoring systems continued evolving. AI bias detection has become highly accurate in identifying discriminatory language patterns. Predictive modeling could identify high-risk situations before they escalated. Real-time intervention prevented thousands of incidents annually, but technology alone wasn't the solution. The cultural shift from tolerating bias to actively preventing it required constant reinforcement and education. "The systems we built will outlast our careers," Kevin often told his team. But someone has to keep watching the watchers, ensuring the protections remain strong. As Dr. Denise Carter concluded her speech, she issued a challenge that resonated beyond the Howard Auditorium. "Every one of you will face moments when someone underestimates you, dismisses you, or assumes you don't belong. Your response in that moment shapes not just your future, but the future of everyone who comes after you. She paused, making eye contact across the audience. Document everything, know your rights, use your voice professionally, and remember, the most powerful response to someone who thinks you don't belong is simply proving that you do. The standing ovation lasted a while, but Dr. Denise Carter's final words carried the real power. Have you experienced discrimination in transportation, the workplace, or public spaces? Report it through federal hotlines. Document incidents with the Transportation Equity mobile app. Share your story. Your voice matters in creating change. Tag someone who needs to hear this message. Share this story to inspire quiet power in others. Subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more victories of dignity over discrimination. Because every moment of professional excellence in the face of prejudice builds a better world for those who follow. Your story matters. Your response shapes history. Your quiet power creates lasting change. In the end, the most powerful lesson from that tense moment in first class wasn't about revenge or public humiliation. It was about quiet power. Dr. Denise Carter and Kevin Whitaker could have raised their voices, matched the cruelty with anger, or demanded immediate recognition. Instead, they chose something far stronger. Calm professionalism, meticulous documentation, and unwavering dignity in the face of ugly prejudice. They let their excellence speak louder than any insult. When someone looked at their clothes, their skin, and decided they didn't belong, they simply proved, without shouting, that they were exactly where they were meant to be. That is the kind of strength that doesn't just win the moment, it changes systems, shifts cultures, and opens doors for everyone who comes after. True power isn't loud. It's knowing your worth so deeply that no one's ignorance can shake it. It's responding to hate with preparation, to doubt with competence, and to disrespect with unshakable integrity. That kind of quiet power doesn't just protect you, it transforms the world around you. If this story touched something deep inside you, if you've ever been underestimated or judged unfairly, drop a comment below and share your own experience. Tell us, how do you choose quiet power when the world tries to push you down? Your story might be the encouragement someone else desperately needs today. And if you believe in dignity, resilience, and real change, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share more stories of everyday heroes who turn adversity into lasting impact. Because together, we're building a world where no one has to fight to simply belong. Thank you for being here. Your voice matters more than you know.